Well, we are tracking new questions this morning about the accuracy of LA's homeless count. It was just completed last month, but some volunteers are telling us about problems trying to report the numbers.
Investigative reporter David Goldstein joins us now with why this count is so important.
It's important also the second year in a row now we've documented a lot of problems with the accuracy of this homeless count. Now the federal government mandates that cities count the homeless every year because federal funds in part are based on those numbers. So getting it as accurate as possible is the key. But now for a second year in a row, some who are involved in the count have questions. Do you believe the count was accurate?
No. I'm completely convinced that the count is flawed, completely flawed.
Jay Handel led 75 volunteers like these last month during the homeless count in West LA.
How long have you been homeless?
He says the new app where volunteers were supposed to input the numbers just didn't work.
It was a nightmare. They're sitting there looking at their phone going, I can't get this to do it.
That wasn't the only problem. He shared this video from his laptop showing the warning failed to submit when he also tried logging volunteers in. It made for a frustrating night.
It was just horrible. Horrible. It's a horrible experience, and I've done this for probably 8 years, chairing this area.
Hello, everyone, and welcome on this chilly January evening to the 2023 Greater Los Angeles Homeless Count.
The count was supposed to be better this year.
As a volunteer this year, you will be using an app called ArcGIS Quick Capture.
LASA, the public agency that oversees the homeless crisis, unveiled this new app to try and ensure the most accurate count.
We've introduced a new tally app. We'll be working from people's phones.
It came after we exposed problems with the numbers from last year's count. Did LASA get it right in this precinct?
LASA did not get the count right.
That was a volunteer from our investigation last year complaining about the old app, which somehow showed no homeless in this area of Venice, much to the surprise of Bill Young and his friends who live on the streets. LASA came back in this area here with 0 people homeless living on the street.
Wow, that's funny.
LASA is the same agency where we caught employees last year throwing cases of food in the dumpster that were supposed to go to the homeless.
We have you, sir, on hidden camera throwing food in a dumpster. Why would you do that?
The agency has an $800 million budget. We found they spent more than $250,000 on this new app for the homeless count that for many volunteers just didn't work.
We know that there were problems.
LA County Supervisor Catherine Barger heard about it firsthand.
One of my staff couldn't download it on 2 phones. And out of the 4 that were walking, only 1 could, and even had problems. So we know fact. The app.
Why should that happen?
Well,
they just got a new app.
It shouldn't happen. And LASA is going to explain, I'm hoping, how they're going to correct this.
The agency wouldn't make anyone available to us to answer questions, but in a written statement said in part, LASA took lessons learned from last year and the best practices from previous years to develop a new quality assurance process, including a new app and distributing backup paper maps and tally sheets if volunteers had connectivity issues. And they provided this map showing if the app didn't work, volunteers could write down the number of homeless, which they claim would be inputted later.
To believe that it's better to do it with a pencil and paper?
Handel, who's been doing the homeless count for 8 years, says this year it was the most frustrating.
I got home probably around 12:45, saying to myself, I'll never do this again. They're just incompetent.
Well, the manufacturer of the app says they weren't told of any system-wide login issues. LASA says they're still looking into those login issues for us, but they say the paper trail will provide a backup where the app failed, and the number is expected to be released sometime later this year. Last year, they came in low, and people were questioning when you look outside and see the homeless compared to the actual count. So
Am I crazy to think it's just easier to use one of those old-fashioned like clicker things, or take video or something and tally it later? Is this a case of technology not being helpful?
well, when you talk to Jay about that, he said years ago we did it on paper. Somehow that might be better, but there's so many homeless out there, as we know, and trying to keep everything together. You do it on paper, then you're relying on somebody later that night to input it into the computer. This way, with technology, they hope everything is seamless, but obviously not.
Well, and last year, that one area of Venice, to see all of those homeless people and it was counted as zero, you think about the funding and just where, the monies are going, and it's not necessarily fair then either.
No, and to be honest, the count is never accurate, totally accurate, because you're estimating how many homeless are out there. They're not allowed to go into tents or people's houses and things like that. But you want to try to get it as accurate as possible. And that's where people are saying there are problems.
Yeah. David, thank you so much.